Joining us now, Carly Fiorina. She ran for president. She ran for Senate. She was going to run for Senate in Virginia. Now she's not going to run for Senate in Virginia, but she's still very much dialed into everything that's going on in America, and we're going to get her thoughts on baseball, football, Mike Pence, ESPN, and other world matter, things in the world that matter. Carly Fiorina, thanks for joining us. You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network, Trucking the Truth.
Good morning, John. How are you? Now, I hate to have to start by correcting you immediately, but I wasn't going to run for Senate in Virginia. You said I was going to run for Senate in Virginia.
I did. I was wrong.
I'd let you know when I made up my mind, which I did.
That's true. That's true. That is a good correction. I thought you were going to run, but now you're not. So now you don't have to comment on this, but now the race is going to be between Corey Stewart and E.W. Jackson. Nick Freitas may or may not get in, but in the irony of all ironies in Virginia politics of all time, E.W. Jackson, who ran for lieutenant governor in 2013, got the nomination at the convention, much to my chagrin at the time. I didn't think he would be a good candidate in the fall, and I was right. Got the nomination, and the entire establishment Republicans abandoned him, including me, and I'm not even an establishment guy. Now, the grand irony is, if it's Stewart versus Jackson, Jackson will become the Republican Party's of Virginia establishment candidate. I tell you what, that's why politics is fun, right? You never know. You never know what is going to happen.
You just never know, and I'll say what I also say to you every time. In not too long, we have an election for governor and lieutenant governor in this Commonwealth. Ed Gillespie and Kim Vogel need every Republican's support. We have to win this election. And it's not going to happen if people sit on the sidelines and get all excited about 18 and forget about a critical election in 17. It's coming up in November.
Okay, so Carly Fiorina, I'm predicting that Ed's going to win this race because I think that Ralph Northam is running probably one of the worst gubernatorial campaigns in history. He's making Cray Deeds look like one of the best candidates ever. This guy's so bad. Now, there was a debate last night. Gillespie did pretty well. We can talk about that a little bit later on. But how do you see Gillespie winning this race when the Democrats are on a 7-game Virginia statewide winning streak?
Well, that's the problem. And not to put too fine a point on it, John, because you're right most of the time. But you also predicted I would run for Virginia Senate, and you missed that one. So what I don't want is your listeners getting complacent because you're telling them Ed's going to win. I sincerely and earnestly hope you're right. He is an incredibly well-qualified and well-prepared candidate. He is a decent and good man that I've known for 15 years. But he will not win without Republican support all across this Commonwealth. He has to get the vote out. And I say that because, as you well know, in off-year elections, which we always have, off-cycle elections, voter turnout is historically low. And this, I think, is going to come down very much to who gets their votes out. Yes, you're right. His opponent is a terrible candidate. He doesn't have a platform. Democrats haven't had a platform that actually works for real people in a long time. His platform is, you know, I'm not Ed Gillespie, I'm not Donald Trump, vote for me. But it all depends who gets their vote out. And so what you see the Democrats doing is spending a lot of money on, you know, fear and anger and resentment campaigns to get their vote out. And what you see Ed doing is what he promised to do, which is talking about the issues that actually matter to Virginians, talking about how he's going to make things better for Virginians. What we need is to get our vote out.
Well, if we do that, and one of the other things I think that Gillespie has to do is he has to motivate the Trump base to get out and vote for him. I'm not sure he's done that right now. He's still got a month remaining. The president did send a tweet out last Thursday night endorsing Ed Gillespie, much to the surprise of some of the media like myself. Gillespie chose not to retweet it out. I have no idea why. Joe Vogel, on the other hand, doing the exact opposite. So maybe that will help. But I think he's got to get the Trump base out. And, you know, Carly, the Trump base in Virginia exists. It's real. I mean, I go back to this
Of course
primary.
it's real. Of course it's real. And he ignores it to his own peril, to your point. Of course it's real.
Well,
and they have to be motivated. They're absolutely right. I mean, gosh, Ed Gillespie should remember that from his primary.
He should. And so we need you to pick up the phone and dial his number and say, you got to focus on how to motivate the Trump base so they come out and put you over the top, because, they run their campaign, how they run their campaign, and they are who they are. I mean, one good thing about Ed in this regard, juxtaposed to Ralph is anything he has to be on any given day. Who knows, right? I mean, the guy changes his position by the hour.
And by the way, the Trump base in Virginia ought to think about Ralph, frankly, the way they thought about Hillary Clinton.
Right.
They'll do anything. They'll say anything. They are a part of the Democrat Party machine. I mean, the whole machinery, Terry McAuliffe, the Clintons, all of them are behind Ralph. It is, the machine is trying to get him elected. So if Hillary Clinton motivated you to do something to stop that, those same forces are at play in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Oh, you're absolutely right.
Behind Ralph.
Look, no question about it. Carly, speaking of California, right, you lived there for a long time. You ran for Senate there. I mean, your governor, Moonbeam, former governor, wants to turn California into a sanctuary state. What the heck does that mean?
Crazy.
And then on the other hand, he's asking for federal relief over the fires he's got. I mean, how do you get the money from the feds and then just thumb your nose at federal law? I don't get that. That's like being in South Carolina, firing on Fort Sumter, and then asking Lincoln for, national aid. I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
Yes, I would ask, by the way, that's why we were so happy and relieved to move back home to Virginia. But we did live in California for 11 years while I was with Hewlett-Packard. Look, first, let's just say, I mean, these fires are a terrible tragedy, as the hurricanes elsewhere have been a terrible tragedy. And there are a whole lot of people in California, I will tell you this from personal knowledge, having run there. If you take away the big coastal cities, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Santa Barbara, the big population centers, inland in California is actually a very conservative population. And so let's not let our anger at Jerry Brown and the crazy legislature there stop our empathy for the poor people in California who are suffering, whether it's the farmers in the Central Valley or the wine growers now in the Napa and Sonoma valleys. But yes, California and its Democrat-dominated legislature are crazy. And what's really crazy about it is actually Jerry Brown, in some cases, has stopped the worst of the craziness. I mean, there was a point where the Democrat legislature in California said, oh, yeah, let's just give illegal immigrants driver's licenses and the right to vote, literally the right to vote. And Jerry Brown had to stop that. So California is politically nuts. There are some brave Republican Party operatives, brave Republican representatives who are fighting back against the tide. But yes, it's a very, very difficult situation. And I said on the campaign trail, and I'll say it again today, I completely agree with President Trump when people say, look, if you want to have a sanctuary city, you want to have a sanctuary state, fine, then there are consequences to that decision. And one of the consequences is you don't get all the money that you want.
Yes, that is one of the consequences. But, a lot of these liberal politicians live in a world where there's no consequences whatsoever, right? Okay, let's get to Mike Pence walking out of the Indianapolis football game on Sunday. A lot of Democrats saying, hey, this was a staged event. It was a political stunt. He went there. San Francisco players have been kneeling since the beginning of the season. He knew it was going to happen. This was all planned so that he could be President Trump's lapdog on this. My point is, I think he went to the football game. I think he really wanted to see his team play, right? See Peyton Manning's number retired, I suppose. But if they didn't kneel, he wouldn't have walked out. So how could you say it was staged?
Well, here's the thing, John, and you and I may not agree on this, but to me it doesn't really matter if it was staged or not. It was inevitable that at a game where both the vice president and the 49ers were present, something like this would happen, whether it was planned or not. I honestly, while I agree with the president and I agree with the vice president, I actually wish the president had never started this. And the reason I say that is because you and I have talked about this before. A leader builds support. I know that this is a popular stand with a lot of us. But if you think back for a moment, Colin Kaepernick hadn't gotten a contract. He wasn't playing football. No one was kneeling anymore. The thing had blown over. And Colin Kaepernick, the guy who started it, had been basically fired and rebuffed by the entire National Football League. But then President Trump brought it up in rather incendiary language in Alabama. And now everybody's kneeling. And it's opened up yet another huge controversy, which whatever side of this you're on, it's divisive. And it's distracting, as an important an issue as it is. I mean, my goodness, we defend, those of us who believe in free speech, while we hate it, we defend people's right, unfortunately, to stomp on the flag and burn the flag. If we don't want to defend it, we should pass a law. But there isn't a law right now. And so I think the president has fanned the flames of something that had all but disappeared. And I don't think it's going away now. And I think that's a shame.
Well, it really is, because if you're a football fan, it's destroying the game. Look, I'm a baseball fan also. One beautiful thing about baseball is we're not involved in any of this. I was at Fenway for 2 days seeing the Astros play with my son, and everybody stands up for the anthem. Everybody takes off their hat, puts their hand or their hat over their heart. Everybody sings it, and we play baseball. So,
yeah,
I mean, it's just...
Exactly. And the problem with this is, you know, in physics, there's that old law, but it applies to politics too. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And so I think there are a whole bunch of people, we've talked about this before, who feel they must react to the president's action. And so it's gotten far bigger as a result, unfortunately.
You are spot on with that. The other side feels that is the most insightful comment on this whole thing I've heard in 2 weeks, Carly, and you nailed it right there. I have to remember what you said. And I want to re-point it out to my listeners. What Carly just said is there is a group out there that they have to react to every single thing the president does, because they view they're part of the resistance or they're part of something. And so it doesn't matter what he does, they have to react to it. So you're right. So he makes the statement on Twitter, on the NFL, or at the rally with Roy Moore, and they have to react to it. And so the president has to really take that into consideration, right? Because nothing he does is going to go without a reaction.
Laws of physics and of politics, for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. It always happens. I mean, one could argue that Trump is a reaction to Obama. The point is, as this thing ricochets back and forth, it is getting increasingly divisive and angry. The nation is becoming increasingly divided and angry. Yeah. I don't think that's a good thing. Leaders find common ground, because without common ground, you cannot solve problems. And meanwhile, we got a bunch of problems, and they're not getting solved.
But it's all sides. I mean, Carly, to be honest.
Yes, it's all sides. It's all sides.
And look, it's easy to sit here on our show and everything that happens, blame the left, right? We can do that. It's easy to do. It's the lazy man's way to do radio, right? Get out the various, go to Drudge, anything that happens, blame the left. There's a shooting in Las Vegas. Somebody found an Antifa pamphlet in the guy's car, blame the left. I mean, it's easy to do, right? But this is both sides, and everybody knows how much of a Trump supporter I am. But it's both sides, because Trump tries to compromise with the Democrats on some things, and then his base, led by people like me, go absolutely ballistic over it. So we don't want any compromise. So all we want to do is fight and be divisive, and then we fire up the base. Look, I'm part of the other side, right? You know that. So,
well, and John,
it's both sides.
You and I have talked about this. When you get people fired up, for politicians, it works because it raises money and it gets people out to vote. Firing people up, getting people angry and resentful. My great fear, John, honestly, we've talked about this. I'm a Christian, you're a Christian. In our faith, two wrongs don't make a right. The left has majored on the politics of anger and resentment and division for years. They don't have a program. They just talk about how you're victimized and how you should be resentful and how you should have so many grievances. And that's what we're going to talk to you about. I don't want our side to do the same thing because it doesn't solve problems. The anger and the resentment and the grievances, and in some cases the victimization, are real on both sides. But somehow we got to move forward here and solve problems.
Well, you're right. We have to figure some of this out now, but the distrust on both sides is so high. And then, Carly, to be candid, I mean, you look at the establishment Republicans in Congress. I mean, we gave them majorities in both houses. They're getting nothing done. A lot of us, like me, that believe in the Trump agenda and the movement feel that leadership in the Republican House and Senate is secretly blocking it. And it's all fueling the divisiveness that you've talked about. There's simply no trust on either side anyplace. It's just not there.
That's right.
There's no
You're
trust.
exactly right. And you've never heard me defend the Republicans in Congress for not getting anything done. Leadership is all about results. A leader solves problems and produces results. That's what the purpose of leadership is. Leadership isn't actually just stoking people's fury. That's called politics. Leadership is about solving problems and producing results, and Republicans haven't done that. Some have. The House has done a better job than the Senate, if we're honest. But, President Trump is right when he says, wow, I expected to show up at my desk on my first day of my presidency with the repeal and the replace plan in front of me. That was a reasonable expectation. He didn't get that. And that's nobody's fault but the Republicans in Congress. On the other hand, one can argue from that point on, they didn't exactly get it together, all two branches of government, the House, the Senate, and the President, to put together a plan. But you're right. People are furious. And it's October 10th, and tax reform is on the table. And you and I have talked about the fact as well that tax reform's got to get done.
Well, the goal is to get it done by Christmas. My fear is that some version will pass the House. It's still negotiation. There's certain principles the president wants. We all know what they are. The details are going to get worked out, and then it's going to go to the Senate. And then right off the bat, you're going to get two people that are going to come out for no's for whatever reason because they represent states. They're not going to get the income tax. They'll find a reason, okay? And then the lobbyists are going to come out. Carly, you know what? You're going to walk down the Capitol like I do. You can go into either Senate building at any time. You're going to go in the door. You're going to go through security. And what are you going to see? You're going to see an army of men in there and women in $5,000 and $6,000 Armani suits with $21,000 Rolex watches running around the halls trying to save their tax loopholes for their cronies. That's what you're going to be fighting. I mean, you've not been the swamp in Washington is real. And it's the moneyed interests, Carly, that are controlling everything. And they control it through taxpayer dollars and through funding of lobbyists to get what they want. And when the negotiation starts, the place is going to be overwhelmed with them.
Yes,
and
which is why you're absolutely right, which is why vast simplification of the tax code is so important, because it's all that complexity, all those 76,000 pages that give the lobbyists their power. It is how the government uses the tax code to decide who gets power. It's all that complexity. And it's why ultimately the only test of a successful administration is, did they move money and power outside of Washington? Is that what happened or not? And in order to get that done, you're so right, John. In order to get that done, the president, the senators who have an R next to their name, and the House Republicans have to get together. And so they've got to stop this feuding. And by the way, the president, because he is the president, has to start it. He can't keep firing shots at people. Yes, people are firing shots at him. It goes with the territory. He is the top dog, and people are going to take shots at the top dog. It comes with being the leader. But they cannot stand up against all those moneyed interests. They cannot drain the swamp. They cannot serve the interests of all the people out there who voted for him unless they keep it together. And they're not keeping it together.
That's going to be the final word because we're out of time. I want to thank Carly Fiorina for joining us today. And, Carly, your keen insight, always appreciated. Thanks for being with us, Carly Fiorina.
Thanks,
Thank you
John.
so much.
Have a great day.
More information, CarlyFiorina.com. This is the John Fredericks Radio Network, Trucking the Truth. We'll be right back. Stay with us.